Hello and welcome to Authors Showcase. I'm your host, Reno Lovison, and I'm here today with my guest, Steve Bellinger, who is the author of an exciting new book that we're going to learn about today called Chronocar. And we're going to learn about that, and we're going to learn a little bit about Steve. But first, I want to thank Steve for being with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great to have you here today. So, Steve, let me see. I was looking at your bio, and I see you grew up in Chicago.
On the west side.
On the west side,
Yeah.
uh-huh. And I guess you shout out to your high school, right?
Oh, yeah, right.
So where'd you
Well,
go?
I went to Crane High School, which
What?
is actually closed now, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's all right. So,
yeah.
just want to sort of get an idea of your Chicago roots.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So, and I understand from your bio also that, and I think this is kind of interesting, that you were, it had mentioned that your mom grew up, or rather worked for a publishing company. And
Right.
that's how you sort of got interested in reading and interested in books. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, she worked for actually a printing company.
Okay.
And she worked with the printers, She was a collator. I'm not even sure what that means. But she would bring books and magazines home.
Sure.
And, and she was an avid reader, so it encouraged us to read.
Yeah.
And she brought all sorts of things home, so we would read different things, and that's when I discovered science fiction.
Great. So what were some of those early books? What was something that
Oh, well,
you
like anything
remember?
by Isaac Asimov, the whole I, Robot series, anything by Heinlein.
Okay.
I discovered a little bit of Arthur C. Clarke later on. Just a
Okay.
lot of great stuff.
Yeah. Now, I'm interested to talk to you today because I hope you don't mind my admitting that I'm not a huge science fiction. I don't want to say I'm not a science fiction fan, but I just haven't read a lot of science fiction.
Okay.
And I tend to be sort of a nonfiction reader. And then
sure.
if I read fiction, it tends to be classics. I probably have said that on this show half a dozen times. But, and so it's just, I think it's a matter I never get around to it. Although,
Sure.
Arthur C. Clarke, I've read a couple. And some of them, they stick with you for a long time because you really remember, like, wow,
sure.
this is really cool. And, especially with the way technology has been changing. So, which makes me think about this is the fact that you went to IIT.
Right.
And you were obviously involved in technology there.
Well, my degree is in psychology, actually.
Oh, okay.
But it's still science. It's
Okay.
still science.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So my question was whether that informs your interest in science fiction at all, or
Well, my general interest in science,
Yeah.
keeps that going. And even now, I spend more time watching documentaries on TV than anything else. You
Sure.
know? So I'm
that's a function of our age,
I watch Star Trek too. Just that I've seen them all already.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So, but science fiction is interesting because of the people who like the novel. Easily a third of the people I've talked to are not science fiction fans, and I think it's because some people don't quite realize what science fiction really is. There's people associated with comic books and
Sure.
and even things
Fantasy.
like Lord of the Rings and things like that. But that's not science fiction.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
so
that's
give
all.
us your take on it. Give us
Well,
your
well,
reviews.
it's not actually mine. It's Asimov's.
Okay.
I read it years ago, and I've yet to find the reference again. But he says that a science fiction story, in a science fiction story, the science is so crucial and central to the story that if you remove it, the story falls apart. Mm-hmm. Now, that means that Star Wars is not science fiction.
Okay.
You give them swords, horses, it's King Arthur.
Sure.
You got rebels fighting an evil empire.
Right,
Now, it's a
right.
lot more exciting because of the spaceships and everything, but the science is not central to the story. Star Trek, take away the Enterprise, you got nothing.
Yeah. Okay.
Usually. I mean, there are some episodes that don't get that deep into the technology, but that's the basic difference.
Sure. Let's talk about that a little bit more. I want to take an early break, and we'll come back and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. We're going to talk a little bit more, obviously a whole lot more about Chronocar. Okay? So stand by, and we'll be back in a minute. Wow, this awesome feel-good book reveals why cool super chefs and health nut docs are dishing about the extraordinary powers of olive oil, nature's liquid gold. Savor deliciously healing surprises. New research deserves high fives because olive oil, a key ingredient in the Mediterranean diet, and other healing oils are making a big splash around the globe. Oil superpowers can lower the risk of facing a bad ticker, the big C, and even stall Father Time. Bring on the butter. When paired with oils, this 20th century forbidden fat is a new 21st century health food. Combining olive oil with other oils can help combat fatigue, fight fat, and help you morph into a lean, energized superhumanoid at any age. In the healing powers of olive oil, You'll discover unusual home cures and scrumptious, yummy, fresh ingredient recipes. Pick up your favorite bottle of EVO and experience the delicious healing powers of olive oil today. Olive oil, bon appetit! Okay, so we're back here watching Author Showcase, and my guest today is Steve Bellinger, and we're talking about his new book, Chronocar, which we're going to talk in depth about in just about a second. But first, we were talking a little bit about Star Trek and the fact that you're a Star Trek fan, and I think what you were saying before the break was that in science fiction, it's really all about this, about the story. Is that right?
Well, about the science in the story.
The science in the story.
Whether the science is real or imaginary, but
Okay.
the science has to be critical part of the story.
A critical part of the story, that's the main key.
Exactly.
Okay, good, and that's what we're going to talk about here. But first I want you to tell me, because you mentioned Star Trek, I want you to tell me a little bit about this vow renewal that you're planning to do,
well.
and the Star Trek angle of
Well,
that.
I tell everybody I'm the world's oldest Trekkie. In the 90s, when I turned 40, is when I bought my first uniform, and I used that to attend conventions. I have autographed pictures from at least one actor from every one of the series. We'll discuss Doctor Who another time.
Oh, okay. Oh, my goodness.
But my wife, Donna, is also a Trekkie, and that's sort of part of what got us together. And we got married the first time.
To each other.
To each other.
Right.
I wanted to have a little more Star Trek into it, but no, she wanted a traditional wedding. Although there were Star Trek references throughout.
Sure.
In fact, the pastor accidentally said Star Wars and almost got chased out of the church.
Oh, okay. I'm
But that's
glad I
another
didn't
story.
make that mistake.
Yeah, but
I understand.
but we're gonna renew our vows in a year or so, and it is gonna be a Star Trek themed wedding. I'm going to wear a dress admiral's uniform, and she's going to wear a leather and lace Klingon wedding dress.
Okay.
And we've been working on how we're going to work around the ceremony and everything. It's going to all be in English. We're not going to do any Klingon.
Okay. Okay.
But and members of our church are really into it. So it should be very interesting.
That's very cool. I think
Yeah.
it's going to be great, and
Oh,
you
yeah.
have a beautiful wife that I think will look beautiful in her Klingon
Oh, she's gonna look
outfit.
gorgeous in that
So
thing, yeah.
That'll be great. So good. Well, that's very cool, and I think that helps us to understand that the idea of science fiction is not just a passing fancy with you.
Oh, sure.
Let's say you're relatively committed to this concept, right?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
true. That's true.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So let's see. Let's talk a little bit about the book, Chronocar.
Okay.
Let's see. I have plenty of things. I did. You just gave me the book today, so I haven't had a chance to read
Sure.
read the whole thing. I'm looking forward to it. But I did look at the online sample, which I would suggest that anybody watching. Actually, I would suggest you go right out and buy the book. But if you
Yeah.
want, if you're anxious, right after the show to go take a look and see what it's all about, you could read a sample chapter online,
Exactly.
and I think that's great. It gave me an idea, about your style and so on, which I think is great. So, Chronocar is a story about time travel. So the time machine comes to mind. So can you tell me how does this book, is this book at all informed by that? I mean, that was first of all, the movie was something we all loved as
Oh,
kids,
sure,
right?
sure.
I mean, didn't you love that
Sure.
great movie? And so would you say that this, was that an inspiration, or does it really have nothing to do with your story?
Yes and no. I mean, I enjoy time travel stories, but being a hardcore science fiction fan, I have yet to see a time travel story that deals with the science of time travel, whether real or imaginary.
Okay.
They deal with people going back in time and changing things, or going to the future and discovering things, but how does that actually work?
Okay.
And part of what I wanted to address here was the science of time travel, what the actual mechanism would be,
Okay.
what the actual laws of
Interesting.
physics might be that would apply to it.
Okay. I would say H.G. Wells pretty much stayed away from that.
Well, yeah.
I mean, and especially at the time that he was writing, probably was a good idea to stay away
Oh,
from
sure,
it. Didn't
sure,
know too much.
sure.
So I think we could probably do a whole episode talking about that, but now
Sure.
you've sort of intrigued me, so now you have to tell me just a little bit about, what have you learned about time travel, in as much as, is it something we should even be fantasizing about?
I don't think is physically possible.
Okay.
What we call time travel today, traveling very fast and ending up in the future like the Planet of the Apes,
Okay.
that's time dilation. You can't control that.
Right.
You can't go to tomorrow at 2 o'clock or yesterday at 4. It's a side effect of the space travel. But in the story, Well, if there's kind of a theme to it, it's the fact that there are always consequences to everything. I mean, if say we drive here tonight, well, there are consequences. We've burned fuel. We've added a little bit of pollution to the air. You know, there is more to it than my just being here versus somewhere else. Well, then there must be consequences to traveling through time. Just the very fact of traveling must have some effect on the universe.
Okay. And so you address that to some degree in your, I'm guessing, roughly 200 and some pages here?
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Okay.
a little less than that, but yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but that's interesting. I look forward to learning about that. So, H.G. Wells was little or no consequence as far as your.
Well, yeah, of course. I
concerned.
mean,
Yeah.
you know, I was a big fan of H.G. Wells, especially. I mean, I love all the classic sci-fi. I mean, you haven't lived till you've read the original Time Machine or the original
Sure.
War of the Worlds.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, I
absolutely.
mean, that's a challenge I'd make to any filmmaker, to make a film of War of the Worlds based on the original movie, original story.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, and let's give a challenge to any filmmaker out there who wants to make a film of Chronocar, because that's
you go.
that would be
No argument
exciting.
from me.
Okay.
Yes.
So now here's another part of the twist that I think our viewers would be interested in, is that it's unfortunate. It's funny I said that, because it's unfortunate that this is something that we need to talk about. But I think we do need to talk about the fact that this
Sure.
is an African American character
Sure.
who is going back and finding a scientist in 1919, roughly, who had first conceived of the Chronocar.
Exactly.
And this young sort of contemporary fellow goes back, and he's going to build
yeah.
this device that he had read about. The part I said is unfortunate is that we shouldn't have to say, well, this is an
Sure.
African American
Sure.
character.
Sure.
But let's say in today's environment, it's still newsworthy. So we're
Sure.
gonna talk about
Sure.
that. So tell me what that means to this book, or if it doesn't mean
Okay.
anything, I'm okay with that too.
Well, it's a valid thing, because the story is about a time traveler, but it's the black experience. I mean, if it were written by an Asian person, it would be an Asian take on it. You know, he goes back to turn of the century Bronzeville, and he gets involved in the big race riot that takes place in 1919.
19, was that the beach one, or is that?
Yeah,
a
well, it
different-
started on the beach.
On the beach,
exactly.
okay, right. Okay,
and
good.
and you know, and the thing is, we talked about how you can't take the science out of science fiction. Well, you can't take the black characters out of this story, because it is about the black characters.
Okay, yeah,
But it's not necessarily written for black people.
sure.
I mean, because a lot of the people who've read it are not black, and they've enjoyed it. But it's part of the setting.
Right.
You know, I
And
mean,
it's part of your experience.
well, exactly,
And
exactly.
so,
I mean, no matter what story you write, if you write it, it's still part of your experience. I mean,
Right.
whether you realize it or not, it's going to be about a white person, a black person, a Latino person.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, exactly right. So I think we all bring, as an author, every author brings himself.
Sure.
I think every book really is in some way a biography.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah,
Because
exactly.
you bring your own experience to it, whether you're a fiction or nonfiction writer,
That's very
whether
true.
it's a biography or a memoir. You're in this. I'm sure we'll all learn a lot about you. All
Sure.
kinds of deep, dark secrets that you hope to never uncover are going to be in here.
Yeah, that's on page. No.
But well, great. Let's talk about. We'll take a quick break. We're going to take a look at maybe one or two book trailers from some other authors, and then we'll come back, and then we're going to talk very specifically about the plot and very specifically about Chronocar. Okay, so we'll be back in just 1 minute.
Khaki Equals Killer, the third novel in the Color of Evil series by Connie Corcoran Wilson, follows the adventures of young Tad McGreevy and friends through the second semester of their senior year that includes romantic encounters, abduction, and a terrifying prom night. John Land, best-selling author of the Caitlin Strong series, says Wilson's work is a subtle hybrid mix of science fiction, thriller, and horror in the tradition of Philip K. Dick and Ray Bradbury. Gary Braver, author of Flashback, says Wilson's characterizations come alive on the page. After spending 33 years teaching students in this age range, she knows what she's talking about. The Color of Evil series is old-school psychological horror, artfully blended with new-school shocks and twists. Bravo, says Jonathan Maybury, New York Times best-selling author and Bram Stoker winner. Tad sees colorful auras around people that tell him whether that person is good or evil. For Tad, red signals violence, khaki equals killer, and it's a color he wants to avoid. Find out who lives happily ever after, and who does not, in Khaki Equals Killer. Available online and at your favorite bookseller.
Okay, so we are back watching Author Showcase here with my guest today, Steve Bellinger, the author of Chronocar. And we left off talking a little bit about how the Black experience interjects itself into this story by way of your very own life, and also how it affects the characters. I understand that the character, because he gets involved in this 1919 race riot and struggle that takes place in Chicago at that time, do you think that this speaks at all to this, to the Black Lives Matters movements or anything that's going on today? I mean, are you trying to, is there a point to be made, and is there a point you want to make about it?
Well, I mean, I started writing this, 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
So, and I had no idea that this would be happening when this, came out. But I guess there is a message there that things haven't changed as much as we think, which is also sort of an underlying theme of the story. There's a scene where he's walking around and he sees the elevated tracks, for the CTA, and same thing we use now. So,
exactly. The interesting thing of the backdrop of the city, although Chicago is a city that tends to reinvent itself a little bit more aggressively than some other cities around the country, but you're right that these things like the L track, great movie moment where it sort of fade from the L track 1919 right into Chicago would be very cool. So filmmakers out there, think of that shot. That would be great.
Talk to this guy.
So, well, great. So give me a quick overview of the story, synopsis involving, the various plot twists that you want us to know about without tipping us off to anything
Okay, well,
important.
It starts with Simi Johnson, who is the son of a slave. It starts in post-Civil War South. And the young man, again, son of a slave, was also born a genius. And as a child, he stumbles upon the Principia, the Isaac Newton classic, and learns that he can understand it. And, he's caught up in this and wants to learn more. Without going too much into detail, he manages to get something of an education, and then he comes up with this idea for time travel in a chronocar, but he can't build one because the technology doesn't exist. So moving up to the year 2015, an IIT student discovers the plans for it and decides to go back to visit the now Dr. Johnson. Well, the only time he can find him is in the year 1919 when he's living on the south side of Chicago. So he goes back to visit the doctor, meets his beautiful daughter, which he did not know that he had, and they get
the doctor's beautiful daughter.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have this modern guy goes back to 1919, and then there's the romantic plot twist, right?
Exactly.
What do we do?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And then from that point on, it's dealing with the things that he does that affects history potentially, and the problems that arise from just simply traveling through time. I'm told that it is a bit of a roller coaster ride. People call it a thriller, which is not what I was expecting. I wanted to write just a good, solid sci-fi story.
Sure.
But a lot of non-sci-fi people are reading it and calling it a roller coaster ride, saying that it's very thrilling, and that the ending is a very big surprise.
I think that's a great way to sort of end your synopsis, because who doesn't want to read a book in which the ending is a very big surprise? Because, don't we all, we're like, whether it's a movie or a book, I'm always, saying, I got to pretty much know how this is going to go. Mysteries, of course, you never know because they usually have two or three possible endings. But it is nice to know that this has a good plot twist at the end. And I know that I've read that in here, which I'm going to read in a moment, a couple of the reviews that you've gotten on this book. So we're here again with Steve Bellinger and talking about the book, The Chronocar. And I'm going to take one quick break, and then we're going to come back and wrap this up a little bit with a few more questions and learn a little bit more about Chronocar, okay?
Okay.
Be right back. Unlock the Power of You shows you how to maximize your personal potential by harnessing sustainable long-term change, and how to realize the powerful source of infinite energy that exists within each of us. Once you have the keys, you can immediately start driving your life in the direction you want to go, toward whatever destination is most inspiring and joyful to you. Full of inspirational and practical advice designed to challenge old beliefs, robotic behaviors, habits, and patterns that no longer serve you. Packed with expert, powerful techniques and guidance that will unlock the highest possible level of life balance, health, happiness, inner peace, and success. Get it now and get ready to unlock the power of you. Available from Aviva Publishing. So we're back here talking with our guest today, Steve Bellinger, the author of Chronocar. And Steve, we were talking during the break about the idea that there are a couple of chapters available online and a couple of different ways in which this people can read a few sample chapters. So do you want to share that with me real quick?
Well, of course, you can do a little preview on Amazon, but the publisher, barkingrainpress.org, you can go there and actually sign up, and they'll send you 4 chapters.
Fantastic. So
an
PDF
ebook
file
format.
or something?
Yeah, or any ebook format that you want.
Fantastic.
So and you can actually read enough of the story to get a very good idea.
Okay, and it's Barking Rain?
Barking Rain Press.
We will be putting that on the screen so everyone can see it, so just go to that website. Where would you prefer that people buy the book? Is that a good place for them to purchase the book?
They can purchase it there. They can purchase it from Amazon. I mean, it's available everywhere. You can go to a bookstore and request it.
Sure, okay.
So it's available
I know
everywhere.
this just came out, so are there any bookstores in Chicago that you know have it in stock right now?
Not in stock, but you can order it at Barnes & Noble. You can
Okay.
order it at Barbara's bookstores.
Okay, great. All right, but you can look for it locally, the Chronocar, and you can also go to barkingrainpress.org. I'm going to put that on the screen for everybody to see. Go read a couple of sample chapters. I have to put my glasses on for this part because I want to read a couple of things that people had written. The exciting time travel kick-ass. It reads like a thriller, complete with a wicked twist that slaps the reader upside the head. And the story is intellectual, funny, and touching while playing with paradoxes of time travel. The Chronocar is one wild ride. Those are 2 reviews that you've gotten on the book. And this is the part one that I was particularly interested in. It says, I'm a history fan, not a sci-fi buff, but a friend recommended this, so I read it. I loved it. The time travel aspect is fun and interesting, and the history, mostly of Chicago in 1919, is well done. So because we're a Chicago-based show, very often we have people,
Sure.
Chicago authors, and Chicago always creeps into whatever it is they're doing. And so, that's a particular interest of mine.
Sure.
And so how did you research some of the historical aspects of the book that are in there?
Hours and hours in the library. I mean, you do have the internet, but I needed to read the actual newspaper accounts because There are references to the riot that are based on fact. I mean, fictionalized a little bit, but how the riot starts is based on the
Okay,
the
and we're going to
actual event.
experience a little bit of that
Exactly.
in here based on the actual history.
Exactly.
And then you alluded earlier to the fact that the character, the main character, is more or less based on you,
Yeah, I
roughly,
mean,
which
yeah, I mean-
authors often do.
Sure.
But you had mentioned something about how your grandfather sort of was in here as well.
Well, yeah.
historically.
There is a scene. I can give a tiny bit of away where Simi is trying to escape the bad times in the South, and he's escaping with a friend, and they spend their last few pennies on some food, a jar of jam and a loaf of bread. And while they're laying it out, he hands the jar of jam to the young man, and he drops it immediately. Well, he freaks out, he cries, he walks away thinking we're going to starve, while Simi takes out a knife and scoops up what's edible from the jam and makes a meal out of it.
Sure.
It's a story my grandfather told us for years.
Is that right?
And we didn't realize he was trying to teach us about perseverance and not giving up.
And not wasting food, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that little bit got into the story. That's sort of a tribute to him.
Yeah. As we travel in the Chronocar, we're going to learn about Chicago history. We're going to learn about some unfortunate racial incidences that are part of our city's past.
A few things that might surprise people that existed back then that
Okay.
weren't
But
aware
more
of.
importantly, and perhaps not more importantly, but we don't want to lose sight of the fact that there's a great romance here
Oh, yeah.
that travels through time
Sure.
and space, I'm sure, right?
Exactly.
And so it looks like there's a lot packed and awesome twist at the end.
Yes.
Yes. So to recap, we want to say that our guest today is Steve Bellinger, and he is the author of The Chronocar, which just came out.
Yeah,
and
last
is
month.
available at your local favorite bookstore. Since it's a Chicago book, I'm sure it's going to show up on the shelves there too. And if you go in and ask for it, then your
Absolutely.
local bookstore will be sure that there are copies available locally. But of course, there's always the ubiquitous Amazon is available, and also you can download a couple of sample chapters either at Amazon or at
the publishers.
At the publisher, which is
Barking Rain Press.
BarkingRainPress.org, and we'll have that online. So, Steve, thanks so much for being our guest today.
Well, thank you.
And I hope everyone will go out and check out a copy of the Chronocar and enjoy it. And we'll look for you next week when we'll have another great guest. So watch your listings and look for us at authorsbroadcast.com. You can watch past episodes there. So thanks again, Steve, and let's wrap it up.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
After a long day at work, nobody wants to come home to a messy living room or dirty kitchen. Life is too short to spend it cleaning when all you need to do is pick up your phone and call Chicago Clean Home. Whether it's your home or business, our mission is to provide a healthier and more comfortable living and working environment. Chicago Clean Home is an affordable, environmentally conscious cleaning service using biodegradable, earth-friendly products certified and approved by organizations such as Green Seal and Ecolog. Surfaces and fixtures will be cleaned using microfiber cloths that retain dirt and remove it rather than spreading it over other surfaces. And our HEPA quality vacuums capture 99% of the dust that is usually simply circulated back into the air. Our outstanding customer service team is ready to answer all your questions and book an appointment to assess your needs and schedule. Call Chicago Clean Home today so you can breathe easier and relax. Leave the cleaning to us.